Okay, it says I'm live, which because the other screen is just saying going live, going live, going live. So I'm going to close that one out. And now here we are. Good morning. I don't expect much of a turnout, so to speak. I just announced this a couple of days ago. I felt an impulse to semi-conclude the Kundalini meditations we've done and workshops to straighten a few things out. So if for no other reason, this is just to document these things, to cover my butt, because some of these things are confusing. And so this is part 3. We've done, I think it's 4, actually. We've done a couple meditations. We've done the presentation. So this is more of a conclusion and warning. However, I'm in a bit of a dark mood this morning, short mood. And I was kind of wondering like why. And suddenly it came to me as I was driving back from my ashram this morning after doing some chores over there, that it's because I'm frustrated. As I talk about, I am trying to, well, I'll get to this. This ties into my short mood this morning, ties directly into this presentation and this work. So anyway, I've learned that whether there's 0 or 5 or 10 viewers on YouTube, it's usually wrong. There's usually way more, not way more, but a few more. I'm not like a big popular guy. So, but anyway, let's move forward and talk about, where's my little clicker? Oh, there it is right in front of me. So this is just to kind of wrap up and conclude some things and give you some safety precautions, etc., and clear up some things. And that's kind of what Spiritual Triangle and Krishnanand is all about. I'm trying to straighten out the crooked paths. I'm trying to offer the real authentic knowledges about these mystical paths that are so completely warped and deformed by Western and Eastern cultures that just get it all wrong. And so anyway, so it's kind of dark news in many ways, because what I end up enlightening people about is that this stuff is completely different than what you've heard. And here's what it really takes. And it's virtually impossible to do. So let's go into that a little bit. As it says, this is conclusion. Oh, I spelled it right. That's good. Sometimes I mistype. And warnings. So we talked a little bit already about Kundalini crisis. Kundalini crisis or instability. Spiritual awakening or personality disorder. Mystical consciousness or psychological issues. I can tell you that in my 54 years on the planet, going on 55 here pretty soon, and having an absolute, undeniable Kundalini event in my life, that 99.9% of the people that I have spoke with and interacted with that think they've had something of this nature are wrong. There are a few. The Kundalini crisis, honestly, I gave this a lot of thought and meditation over the last couple of days. Because my intention today was to give the proper warnings to make sure that people were aware what the risks are. Because Kundalini is such a tremendously powerful event. However, having had one, the real deal, legit surface of consciousness just completely unfolding, I can tell you that it is a gorgeous, amazing thing. And certainly there are some risks involved because it's so potent and so powerful that it rearranges and rewires you. And I can see how somebody with already fragile mental stability would absolutely go off the deep end. They wouldn't be able to process it. You can't exist in this state of consciousness, the sensations of it, and maintain a normal existence. And yet I did. And so I'm kind of contradicting myself. It's a gorgeous, beautiful, wonderful, powerful, life-changing event. And yes, there are risks involved. And I can see logically how people have some instability would possibly go into a crisis. But at the same time, the crisis, I just don't buy it. This is such a magnanimously, tremendously beautiful experience and sensation that my experience with talking with so many people over the years is, again, that most people that think they're having a Kundalini crisis are having instabilities. They're having disorders. They're having all kinds of issues. And as a private practice behavioral specialist for 15 years in the trenches with some of the most severe disorders on the planet, I think I know a little bit of what I'm talking about. There are people that are experiencing Kundalini awakening and activations. Most of them are in remote regions in Himalayas. There's only a few. And I do suspect that some of the people that I myself have worked with, one man in particular that is brilliant, a savant, so gifted in his art, his science, his intellect is so beyond measure, and yet he can't handle his own life. He's got such instabilities that while he is able to create and generate art that is mind-blowing in so many different levels, photography, paint, I mean, he's just prodigious. And his ability to conceive and perceive and understand advanced knowledge of computers and mathematics and geology, I mean, it's just amazing. It's hard not to see him as a savant and in awe of him. And yet, he also had a closet full of urine bottles that when you talk to him and ask him why he was doing this, he had a very logical explanation for it. 200 or 300 bottles of urine that he's saving because the aliens that he visits with the backyard, etc., kind of thing. So I do suspect with some of the symptoms that he and other people have that the Kundalini is very awake and it's overwhelming for them. Kundalini can be awakened in many instances, in many ways. And this is kind of what this is all about, is to discuss that. Certainly a traumatic event like a death experience, which I've also had, which definitely activated mine a little bit more, woke it back up a little bit more, can cause that. But let's talk about, again, what this workshop has been about deliberately, not spontaneous, but deliberate awakening and activation of your Kundalini. There's tons of stuff online that propagate this, and they don't know what the F they're talking about. I mean, I watch this and I'm just horrified. These people don't have any study, they don't have any knowledge, and they're just, as usual with the YouTube generation, et cetera, they're just proliferating this stuff. And so when we go back to the actual text, as I did last week was that we talked about, the Yoga Pradipika, the Upanishads, the Vedas, the Yoga Kundalini Upanishad itself, we need to pay attention to these original sources that tell us exactly what it is, how to do it, and all the rules about it, all the way it functions and doesn't function. And they tell you straight out, it is not appropriate in the age of Kali Yuga. It won't work. You can't do it. And this is Kali Yuga in full swing. It's in the beginning stages, but we're already 3 times ahead of schedule. That's what we call a Maha Kali Yuga. It's bigger, badder, harder, and it's accelerating 3 times as fast as usual. So the particulars, the work, the efforts, the knowledge that is required to activate and work with Kundalini is not appropriate in Kali Yuga. I don't just mean appropriate, it's virtually impossible. No one has the capacity, mentally, physically, etc., to actually do this stuff. It requires an authentic master, somebody that is in that consciousness, that knows how to do it, that can guide you through it. No other way. It is impossible, as I gave quotes out of the Yoga Kundalini Upanishad last week, excuse me, impossible to understand it for a regular person. Only an enlightened master could possibly fathom it and truly make sense of it. And I gave you those samples where, excuse me, impossible possibly to follow. And I'm going to give some examples today and try to clear some of that up. Several lifetimes to accomplish. The Upanishads tell us directly that if you pull it off, it'll take you several lifetimes of constant, complete dedication to it. Not part-time. I mean, go live in a cave in the Himalayas and do Kundalini yoga nonstop for almost your entire life. No Starbucks, no Walmart, none of those kind of things. You live in the cave and just think Kundalini. So rethink your drink. You may not, so the biggest risk of Kundalini is to spend your life pursuing it or getting a lot of time and energy into it. And the biggest risk, the crisis, is to waste your time. Not that you're going to have a bad Kundalini event, because again, I'm contradicting that now. I had to give it some thought and I just don't see it. Yes, again, as I mentioned, it does have some risk. It's so overwhelming, but it's so gorgeous that Maybe because I was and am a mentally stable individual. Maybe that's why I didn't have any bad effects. But I know a couple of other people, the woman that I initiated with me with this experience, she also is okay. She's had some issues. So rethink your drink, because the time and effort to put into this and be genuine with it is worth it, but it's not accessible in Kali Yuga, which is what's the age we're in now. 99% of information on Kundalini is flat out wrong. Now, why do I hold myself above and say that mine is right? Because I'm literally giving you the actual knowledge from the Upanishads. And even that is somewhat lost in translation. As I don't tell you what it means. I try a little bit, but I'm not qualified. I'm not an enlightened master. And so these people that think they know what Kundalini is because they go to their yoga studios and they do some yoga by some teacher that can't even spell Upanishad, which is a tough word to spell, by the way. So again, these warnings are, the crisis really is to try not to waste your time. Kundalini is not accessible or available or really pursuable in the age of Kali. We're 5,000 years into Kali Yuga. You don't want to know how long it is if you don't already know. You need to change your lifestyle completely. You can't be who you are, eat meat, have vices. You've got to be a yogi. You've got to go live in austerities. You've got to be deprived of almost all your sensual things or live like a hedonist. It's a very intense, extreme path. You need to change your lifestyle. You can't just be who you are every day. And again, the main thing, as I mentioned, vegetarianism. I'm not trying to advocate. I'm not a vegetarian advocate. I'm saying that it's not possible to work with these energies and still have the karmas that come with an omnivorous diet, for example. So you have to change your lifestyle. The commitment, the dedication, the work, the efforts, the time involved is extraneous. You need to have the right intention. This, to me, is very personal. As I've had certain events recently that re-established my motivation to seek and reactivate my Kundalini in a full-blown state instead of the subtle one that it is still in from the first time. These were some very clear signs for me, you could say. And even then, I still go back and forth and thinking, like, I don't want my own interpretation. I want to know that I'm doing the spiritual thing. And the moment I try to interpret a spiritual message, well, I'm a human being, so it can possibly be influenced by my ego, my sense of self, et cetera, et cetera. So we need to have the right intention. I am on a path of bhakti yoga, surrender, devotion to a personal form of God, the expression of perfect divine love, Radha Krishna. I'm not going to screw that up. That's all I want. That's all I've ever wanted. And so Kundalini is not in contrast to that. Kundalini, like every path of yoga, as every path of mysticism, is simply to get you into the threshold, into position, to be able to do the final surrender. It's not an end of itself. It's a means to an end. And this is vital too. If you're messing around with Kundalini, if you are fortunate enough or unfortunate enough to actually activate your Kundalini, well, what are you going to do with it? See, when I was 26 and my event occurred, just as I went to 26, 27, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know anything about it. This is a past life leftover sanskar and a very special set of circumstances for me in particular that caused this event to occur. But I had no idea what to do with it. I didn't even know what it was. And so now I do. It's a complicated consideration as to should I continue to pursue it or re-pursue it again now that I know the intention. Again, I've had some certain events, some very profound mystical events and signs, you could say, that to me became somewhat undeniable that it's worthwhile to pursue again. Because the quasi-enlightenment, the Kundalini event, the sphere of consciousness expanding its surface, all these things, these symptoms, basically, as it does in Ashtanga Yoga, the 8 branches, and as it does in the Eightfold Path of Buddhism, brings you to the threshold. Buddha wasn't teaching you how to become enlightened. He was teaching you how to be available to be enlightened. But if you didn't do all this stuff, you ain't even going to qualify. He gives you the eightfold path to clean your shit up, to clean up your mind and your life and your spirit, because otherwise you don't stand a chance. So what Kundalini does is it expands your consciousness to a point that you now can see. You're no longer spot existent. You're somewhat omnipresent, somewhat omniscient. I'm not saying completely. That's a contradiction itself. I'm saying that your consciousness has expanded to not being here and now, but you're here and there, and you're here at the same time. You're not confined by time and geography in the same way as you do in normal consciousness at all. What this does is it provides you with the clarity. You're no longer bound by your egos and these kind of layers of consciousness. There's something like 22 of them. You're no longer bound by those. So many of them have been removed instantly from a Kundalini event that you now can see the forest of the trees. You can become enlightened, liberated, mukti, they call it, where your soul becomes one with the overall, and you're no longer bound by the material reality, Maya, or you can surrender to a personal form of God, which is infinite and eternal bliss. I want the bliss. I don't want to just be liberated from suffering. I want the pleasure. I don't want just a lack of pain. I want an avoidance of pain. I want to experience the pleasure. And you can. But Kundalini does put you in a position to be able to do this possibly instantly. So now that I know the intention at this stage of my life, again, there's an advantage. If I was told that I had a guarantee that if I continue to practice into Kundalini, that I would awaken it again and activate that phenomenal experience, but it was going to compromise my ultimate God realization, spiritual enlightenment through bhakti of a personal form of Radha Krishna, forget it. I'm out. I don't want that. If this can be used as a tool to expand my opportunity to become God realized, G with a capital G and a capital R, then I want to do it. I want every advantage I can get, but I wouldn't do it to compromise if it was going to be a remote risk of compromising it, which I'm still considering. So what can go wrong? I'm trying to remember why I put that down there. I put these little notes down there to kind of remind me like what my topics are. So what can go wrong? Let's get back to it. Tantra and intention. So again, I'm going to share a little bit of that personal realization of what's kind of reactivated my motivation to get involved with Kundalini again after years of setting it aside. And that is, I'll be very blunt, and I'm not writing any of this down, so that way you have only way people would know is if they see it. I've been a very sexual person all my life, since I was like an infant, really, seriously. And Tantra is one area of it, one branch of it is sexually oriented. They call it the yoga of sex. This is a wonderful book, by the way, which I'll talk about a little bit. One of the very few that's authentic and real. In this age of Kali Yuga, you will not be able to meditate your way into awakening your Kundalini. Now, don't get me wrong. Again, let me qualify that. There are indeed some Babas in the Himalayas in India and other places. There are a few that are doing it, that have done it, and they can even teach you. And I saw one even on YouTube, of all places, how I found him. And somebody went in the Himalayas and found this guy and interviewed him for like 5 minutes. And I could tell by what he was saying, he's the real deal. He spoke English. Some Baba up in the Himalayas. So, barring that, the only way that you possibly could have a Kundalini activation event intentionally, in my opinion, I wouldn't say only way. The way that I know of is the yoga of sex. The sexual event is such a tremendous sacred energy that transcends every other pleasure that we know. It has mystical properties to it that are profound. And my initiation, my event was a sexual act. And so that's what I know. That's intriguing because I figure even if I fail, well, how bad can it be to try for a long time? What's the worst that can happen? I have a really great time with some tantric yogini. I'm down for that. I'm single now, so I want to put that out there that I'm not breaking any vows. I would never betray anybody. And for many years, again, part of the reason I was not pursuing Tantra or yoga or Kundalini was because I was involved in a very committed relationship. I was very much in love for many, many years. That kind of went away at some point. So my dark mood that I referred to when I first started out today, that I was wondering what it was coming from, is part of that, the frustration. As I am in Kali Yuga, in a world full of people that barely know what Tantra and yoga is properly and don't know what Kundalini is and think they do, how am I possibly going to find a partner to explore and experiment and practice the tantric techniques when the consciousness isn't there? I mean, I spent my whole life experiencing and training and studying and having the event. So I get it, but how would I possibly find another person who could participate in that with me? So it was kind of my dark moods because I had this kind of unconscious, subconscious awareness that I am also most likely, what did I say here? I didn't say yet. Wasting my time. That's the real crisis or real risks in Kundalini, is that you may be wasting your time. Now, again, part of me is like, well, so I'm pursuing through a tantric sexual thing. If I have a good partner, so how bad can that be? I'm not hurting anybody. It's fun. It's enjoyable. So again, so these two reminders here, Tantra and intention. Tantra, in my opinion, is the only way during this Kali Yuga age to be able to activate intentionally your Kundalini. I'm sure there are, and again, that's my take. Mine's limited. That's what I experienced. That's what I know. I personally can't see myself meditating and doing the techniques involved to do Kundalini in a more natural, organic way. As I gave that excerpt from the Yoga Kundalini Upanishad. Similarly, in this book, this guy's really spot on. And I'm just going to read it instead of showing it. I'm going to read a brief little thing here. So here's part of the breathing, sun and moon breath. The Sushumna breath through both nostrils simultaneously controls man's destiny, death, and time. The kind of breath flow from the parents during intercourse will eventually determine the sex of a child. Thus, if the man's breath is through the Pingala, or right side, and the woman's is through the Ida, or left nostril, the resulting child will be male. Now, again, we skip down a little bit. So, where I got a little bit lost here. So, there's basically these instructions on how to breathe through your Kundalini meditations. I can't find it right now. So I can tell you that, to say it's complicated, oh my God. You better focus full time. You better have a very clear head, because it is so impossible to manage and also impossible to do. The few breathing techniques that I've shown, I've already got some feedback from a couple of people saying that I'm trying, but I mean, this is really hard to manage. It's harder to do it and be able to think about it. And I encourage them and I say, look, in the beginning, you got to think a lot about it. You got to be very focused, which totally defeats the purpose of it, of what you're actually trying to accomplish with it. But over time, it becomes natural. As I explained in my other meditations, with an alternate nostril breathing and the belly breathing and the complete breath, etc., and the fire breathing, that for me now it's natural. I don't need to focus on it. I know how to do them. But what I'm doing, even over those three, and I'm doing them properly, that's like a tenth of what you really need to be able to do. It's intense. In addition to all kinds of postures and other things, again, modifications to your lifestyle. So the intention, Tantra, in my opinion, for me, is the go-to way. I can't see myself at 54 being able to, with obligations to the world, survive, etc., to be able to hole up in a room for the rest of my life to meditate my way into Kundalini activation. It's just not possible. And even then, I'm probably not going to be able to pull it off, because I am thinking about my coffee. I am thinking about something pleasurable, something that needs to be done. So for me, it's a shortcut, and it is. And I am living proof that it can and does work, that there are people that aren't spiritual at all and have no mystical training at all. I didn't at the time. I had very basic understanding and spiritual tendencies, but I didn't have any training when mine occurred. So that means that I have evidence. I have firsthand evidence, which is so hard to turn away from, because I had absolute firsthand evidence and memory of such a profound event that was so undeniable that, again, completely through a very sexual technique. I wasn't meditating. I didn't know pranayama. I didn't know any of that stuff then. Neither did my partner. Not that I know of. She knew some basics. She didn't. She was applying them. But we both have concluded in subsequent conversations that the real features that allowed this to occur, which had never occurred with her before, with a partner, was she and I were close. We were very affectionate and adoring of each other. We had a lot of love. We were experiencing mystical events prior and during, past life remembrances with each other, very visceral, very intense, not kind of vague at all. I mean, like memories of this lifetime. It is clear. So we had some circumstances that might be required. I don't know. I got a little bit of evidence on both sides that this may be able to be brought by through a sexually tantric practice without any of those mental, emotional connections. Maybe not. Again, I'm willing to try. What do I got to lose? So, and again, the intention. And again, I'm trying to remember. I mean, I kind of put this together because I just announced this 2 days ago. I have an obligation to make sure that I concluded it and made the warnings. The intention is vital, to know what you're doing and why. This is probably the most vital element of the lifestyle change needed for a yogini or yogi to be pursuing Kundalini. With no intention, it's not that you won't be able to pull it off, because clearly, again, I had the event and I had no intention. I didn't know what to do with it. So it can occur, but it's a waste. It was completely wasted on me. Now, not completely. I will say that the benefits that I got from it were a few things. Number one, my Kundalini has been somewhat awakened, aroused, and activated since then. I'm not on levels of consciousness that everybody else is. So it stays with you, not as intensely, but it's still there. Secondly, my ability to access knowledge, retain it, share it, make sense of it. There's an intuitive level that I gained from my Kundalini event that, again, is still present. And so, in a sense, you could say that I do have a little bit more access, I think, access to the enlightenment moment. In other words, possibly, maybe I might be getting double the results. I might be meditating for 10 minutes and get 20 minutes worth of results because of my Kundalini event. So the intention is very important before you begin and during it, because again, even if you never pull it off, even if you never have this event occur, you didn't lose anything. Again, if it's a sexual thing, well, I'm still having some fun. And if even if you have the right intention and you meditate and you try, then you're doing bhakti. You're doing devotion. Your intention is to become one with the divine love form of God, to serve them, to serve her. And so that is sacred. That is spiritual. So you're not wasting your time. That's going into your spiritual bank account. That's a deposit made regularly because your intention is what makes that. Intention is everything. In your meditations, if you want peace, well, that's great. I personally don't. I want it, but ultimately, I want bliss. I want God's direct association. So your intention is very clear because whatever path of yoga you pursue, they all have different goals. They all have different end results. And all the yogi masters will tell you, if you go to a hatha yoga master that's enlightened and say that you want to experience the God realization of Radha Krishna or Shiva, then he's going to say, well, move on. I don't do that. I can teach you how to be liberated, but I don't do that. And if you go to a Rasic saint and say that you want to be liberated and experience mukti, they'd say, I don't do that. I'm not a master of that. Good luck to you. Move along. I teach bhakti. I teach God realization in personal form. So whatever you're doing in the world and in your spiritual practices, intention is vital. Why are you doing what you're doing? This elevates the results, your motivation, your dedication, your participation. It gives it a turbo boost because you know why you're doing it. Before you ever begin any spiritual endeavor or any endeavor really in the world too, you should absolutely have a clear personal connection to the intention you have. Personal. Do I have a personal intention of taking out the trash? Well, yeah. I don't want trash in my house. So I have emotion behind that. That's legit. It's just a chore, but somewhere in there is a layer or two of personal intention. And that makes it more tolerable. It makes me more efficient at performing it. It makes me more willing to do it and to do it now rather than later, etc. So work on your intention. Now, this is going to be brief today. We're going to start. I can already see we're getting kind of wrapped up. I don't know what that was supposed to be on that blank slide. Something was. I don't know. So some new insights from some of the reading and studying that I'm doing. We see in this image the two channels, the nadis, going up and down, the ascending and descending currents. And we see the different chakras. And we see one in the center, that's Sushumna. Ida, Pingala are on the right and left, the ascending and descending currents, the solar and lunar. And then up to the middle is Sushumna. What we want to do, you see the two alternating currents, they intersect. This one doesn't show that, but they intersect around the chakras and they pick up and receive and give and take energy from them as they go. But ultimately, when we're distilling this up and down, as I've said in the other meditations and other workshops on this, what we're doing is we're getting this alternating current to become direct. We want to take this and put it into the mouth of the Sushumna. Down there where you see the very bottom, where it says Kundalini. When we take these forces and put them in the mouth of Sushumna, then it has a direct, singular line straight to the top. Sahasrara chakra. It's tempting every time, because I'm an intellectual and I kind of get off on it, to the moment I mention one aspect, I want to start to explain it. But it defeats the purpose of the meaning of this presentation today. That I'm trying to tell you that basically, in a kind way, don't waste your time. I'm not saying don't waste your time because it's not worth it. It's totally worth it. The Kundalini event is, again, indescribable. Great. There was a lot of pain. There was a lot of weird stuff involved, for sure. Very weird. But you will have zero doubt, zero lack of faith in spirituality from that point forward. Never, ever. It is firsthand, absolute evidence. So it's worth it in that regard, but not worth it in the regard that this is Kali Yuga and the amount of work and the sacrifice you need to make will probably not yield results either way. As I mention and share with you that I am pursuing my own little shortcut through tantric sex techniques because it's worked for me in the past. I'm not encouraging it. I would imagine there are things that can definitely go wrong for you, especially without being trained or having the experience, and for me as well. Again, I have some advantages. I clearly had this in a very recent past life or some kind of training because it was the only way that it occurred to begin with. So I'm not immune to the risks. I'm sure of that, but I definitely have some sort of immunity from some level of immunity from it. And again, I've also studied and put in the time to gain the knowledge. So basically, some of the new studying that I'm doing is revealing that as the Ida and Pingala ascending and descending alternating currents are weaving in and out in a spiral, that the ultimate goal of Kundalini activation is to straighten it out. That's kind of a new revelation for me. I've been working with the spiral for years. No wonder why I wasn't really getting I did make some progress. I had some intense experiences, but not the whole thing. Because again, as much as you study and read, you can't make sense of it. I mean, it comes and goes. And when the truth is simple, when you see it. And when I get new pieces of information that are accurate, my Kundalini, my somewhat advanced mind in these areas can sense that this is legit, this is true, this is correct. And so partly what I was doing wrong in my Kundalini meditations and activation experiences was I was working with the spiral and each chakra and bringing this up instead of distilling it down, up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. That's distillation. Down into the I'm getting the word, not the Manipura, the Muladhara, root chakra, to stifle and suffocate that Kundalini serpent that coiled 3.5 times, that energy, and cause it to rise up to the mouth, through the Sushumna, the central column, all the way up, a straight line. This is what needs to be done. And again, the postures, techniques, etc., are complicated and they will seem endless, massive volumes. Keep in mind the Upanishads that teach all this, you're only going to get one set of instructions per book. The next set of instructions or another part of it is in a completely different Upanishad or Sutra or Veda or something. Why are they all spread out? I would assume, I'm imagining that it's to make it a little bit more difficult, to make the people that want it initiate them by having to put in the work. Because if they put it all in one place, maybe people would abuse it. I don't know. But that's true with all the Upanishads and Vedas. Other than the Bhagavatam, nothing is complete. The Bhagavad Gita, that is renowned for being the primary teachings in liberation. Krishna says to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita several times, here's what you do, here's how you do it, and only what you need to do is surrender and do bhakti. And the Bhagavad Gita is an expanded chapter, a minor one, of the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam has it all. And it ain't complicated and full of scientific jargon. It's the essence of the philosophy of divine love. So there's some science here. The warnings I've given you that you might waste your time. The warnings I've given you that, yes, indeed, Kundalini crisis probably does exist. But most people aren't really experiencing that, but they lose their minds, which is also a risk. I mean, you do something like this, and you can definitely, if you're somewhat unstable anyway, you're at risk. I'm not discouraging anyone from pursuing this and practicing it. It's beautiful. All the paths of yoga are beautiful and rewarding. And worst case scenario, you're never wasting your time because, again, it's a beautiful, lovely scenario, as long as you're not neglecting other areas of your life and your spirituality. I will not neglect my bhakti yoga path of complete surrender to perform these other meditations. I will not neglect my survival needs, my material needs, the people that rely on me, etc. I have to be responsible. I have to keep my karma up. I got to keep my dedication correct. So pursue all you want. I'm not discouraging that. What I am encouraging is that you know the truth of what you're up against, and whether you can, so that way you can make a mature decision of whether you want to pursue this or not. In order to make a mature decision, we need to have all the information so we can balance it out and ask ourselves personally, is this right for me? Whether you're buying a car, a house, any type of commitment, getting in a relationship, going out for a drink, I don't care what it is this right for me? Given the current circumstances, given what's involved, is this right for me? Is it worthwhile? I need all the information. We're not talking about something as simple as getting something to eat. We're talking about something that is in life-altering, cataclysmic event that takes dedications and commitments that are beyond words. And so we need all the information. And that's what this conclusion really is about. And when I say conclusion, there's some air quotes around that, because I will continue, if I continue to pursue, which right now I am, my Kundalini activation. Peripherally, I'm not like dead folks, like I'm not 24/7 at all. I'm pursuing it as a hobby, as a fun thing, and seriously. I guess, like I said, if I'm doing a tantric sex act, how bad can it be? I mean, if I never pull it off, it's worth trying. So when I say conclusion, I'm inferring that as I make progress or don't, I'll put in some updates. The ultimate goal of doing these Kundalini meetups is to document the event itself, the success or the failure of it, and what I've done, so that people can see in real time what's going on with it. Let's begin to wrap. My little plug here, you got to do that. So, Spiritual Triangle. There's readings, live sessions, training, and workshops. Oh, and workbooks. I encourage you to participate in this. The readings are profound. I just completed a reading for a young woman that's 18 pages. And it covers her entire life. I mean, I get to sit down and meet with her in a few days over this. And I don't know her, but I know her now, because doing this reading reveals so many things. It's not just about predictions. What I love about Spiritual Triangle readings that I'm doing is combining astrology and numerology and tarot and I Ching and Kabbalah, all together, all 5 modalities in one single modality. And it just doesn't teach you what to expect, what's coming, predictions. It teaches you what to do with it, how you can use this knowledge and these insights to expand yourself, to become more evolved, solve issues in your life and in your spirit. I encourage those, the workbooks that I'm working on. There's 4 or 5 available now. They're very thorough. And one of them, one of my favorites that I wrote years ago, is on Kabbalah. And I mentioned that I think that's going to be the next streams that I do is going to be on Kabbalah. It's probably going to take 2-3 workshops, because Kabbalah is amazing. It's complicated in a beautiful way. It's fun. It's thorough. It's dead on accurate. I mean, I'm stunned that a Western modality kind of like gets. And so you can see here in this image, the flash, that's called the lightning flash, that goes down through the tree. But that flash also goes up. And that represents Kundalini right there. And yes, they did know it, but they didn't know the name of it. That's all being documented in the new book that I'm working on. So I've been wanting to do the Kabbalah workshops for some time because I just have a personal affection for it. It's just fun. I love the science of it. I love the thoroughness of it. I love the symbology of it. It's where tarot comes from. Tarot actually originates from Kabbalah before it was ever created it was created in the 15th century to preserve tree of life knowledge. That's what tarot was invented for. That was mentioned in my tarot workshop, which is available on this channel. But now we get to take it to the next level. Again, tarot was invented as an expansion or an explanation to codify and represent tree of life Kabbalah. That's it. That's all really tarot does. That's what it was, a way to preserve the Kabbalistic tree of life knowledge in a pictorial form. So it could never go away, because pictures speak 1,000 words. The masters knew then that the knowledge of Kabbalah and tree of life was eventually going to go away and it would get ruined and all this kind of, so they created these images, these deck of cards, to preserve them. So we're going to be able to go into that. It's a fun modality. It's challenging. It's profound. It's not religious. It's really just mysticism at its finest. It gets it. It's accurate. It's right. And I'm going to enjoy it. I've been studying Kabbalah for much of my adult life. And for a while, I was able to speak some Hebrew, still am a little bit, and use the letters, etc. And it's a lot of fun. So I hope you'll join me with that. So that's really all it was today. I enjoy your visits, and I appreciate you being my guest and allowing me to be your guest. And I don't see any questions. It only shows one person there. It might be several, I don't know. If you have a question or so, let me know. It's always great if you want to thumbs up the channel. I don't really care too much about that stuff, but I guess I'm supposed to plug that. And please visit the website, spiritualtriangle.com, and take a look around. There's a lot of fun stuff there. There's a lot of free stuff there, and I'm happy to help you with anything I can. To be continued. Radhe Radhe, Jai Shri Radhe, Om Shanti, be at peace.